What is up, Breakthrough Success listeners? Marc, founder of the 5-day podcast launch mini course here. And podcasting is just one of my favorite mediums. You get to have conversations with people. You get to grow your business. You get to do so many different things, provide value. And we have someone who is a guest here today. She is also a podcaster. She also uses her podcast in very interesting ways to build her business. So we're going to talk about some of those things. So our guest who joins us, she is the founder of Chris Media, where she helps high-ticket service providers convert more of their audience by scaling engagement using messenger marketing. She's originally from Singapore, but she now runs her messenger marketing agency online while traveling the world. Our guest who joins us today is none other than Chrystabelle. Chrystabelle, welcome to the show.
Hey, how's it going, Marc? Appreciate it.
I am doing great, and I'm appreciative of you joining us because you have a lot of knowledge in the podcasting industry. Your podcast is Hack Your Online Business, which we will be linking to. But can you share with us a little bit on why you started your podcast and how you saw the business potential?
Yeah, for sure. So I started my podcast, Hack Your Online Business, about a year and 2 months ago. And so I started out only because I saw this way of kind of reaching my target audience, who are high ticket service providers like coaches, business coaches, life coaches, consultants, service providers. What's the best way to reach out to them and to connect with them without kind of saying, hey, buy my service, get my service. So using my podcast, it was a great avenue for me to say like, hey, let me give you this thing, which was my platform. Let me give you this thing in exchange. We get to know each other. And if you like what I'm talking about, then, you might one day sign up to become my client or refer me to someone else, or, one day talk about me and my services, right? So that was kind of the whole premise behind why I decided to start this podcast. And of course, like the whole idea was, if I get listeners tuning into the podcast, they like what they hear about messenger marketing or, online businesses, then they might also sign up for my service or my mastermind. So it was just kind of a way for me to just kind of monetize my podcast without looking for sponsors, just kind of reaching out to the people, connecting with them, or directly selling to them through, these sponsored episodes in my shows. Yeah.
And I love this approach where you use podcasting as a way to get to know people who could end up being your clients. And it is definitely something I recommend as well. I do it on Breakthrough Success. I'm wondering what goes into your process of finding guests, because you're not just looking for a guest who could provide value, you're also looking for a guest who could afford your services and is in that direction. So what's your process?
Yeah, absolutely. And so, the whole podcast is based on interviewing successful online entrepreneurs to begin with. And so they definitely need to have some kind of success behind them, years behind them, a huge following behind them. So just based on that, what I normally do is me and my team will go out looking for business coaches or people who have been on podcasts, and try to find the ones who have a great following, or, people have heard of them before and have referred them to us. And so just by doing that, just going out and making sure that these people, they have a presence on social media, they have a presence online, they have been on other people's podcasts before, they have spoken on stages, they have spoken at conferences. These people are generally the high ticket service providers. So it's been pretty good because there are actually a lot of high ticket service providers out there. So it's not too difficult in a small community to find it. They're everywhere, right? Business coaches are everywhere, consultants are everywhere. So it's just about trying to make sure that they've got the numbers behind them to kind of support, whatever they're claiming, the 6 figures, 7 figures. And then of course, if they're visible at all.
And you mentioned high ticket, which is interesting. And when you do have something high ticket, you just need less sales to make a certain income goal. So for people who feel like maybe they don't see how high ticket could be for them, what would your advice be for someone to structure a high ticket offer where they could charge someone 5 figures?
Yeah, I think high ticket's all about relationship and about that trust you're talking about. I think it's really hard to convince someone to give you a huge sum of money if they have no trust in you. They don't know who you are, which is a great reason why you want to have a podcast to begin with, because then you're building trust over time. People get to know and like and trust you just by hearing you talk about stuff, and then you're interviewing all these people. And of course, when you network with high ticket, service providers or whoever they are, high ticket people, they are just so much easier to work with as well, because they're like, it's so funny, like the clients who pay you the most, they are so easy to work with, and the clients who pay you the least, they are like the toughest ones to work with, right? It's always the case, right? And so it's so funny with the high ticket service providers, they know what they need in their business, they know what they need in their marketing. So when they hear something good, they're like, you know what, Mark, I want this thing. Like, just do this. Okay, what's the cost? Okay, go ahead. They don't try to like dime you and try like, oh, give me a discount here, give me a discount there. Like, come on, right? So I just love working with high ticket service providers, but you really gotta just kind of, create content, create some kind of buzz behind your brand name as well. Just kind of make sure that your personal brand is trustworthy, so that people actually know you, so they'll pay you that amount that you're asking for.
Yeah, that's a really great point. The higher ticket customers, they're going to be easier to work with. Granted, you still have to give them results, but they are going to be easier to work with. And the interesting dynamic with podcast prospecting is that you could interview technically as many people as you want. And, people are coming on your show, but you have to balance I want to interview this many people, but I still have to maintain a publishing schedule. So how do you manage that? And how many people do you like to interview in a typical week?
Yeah, so I try to keep it at least twice a week now. So I started off with just once a week, and it was once a week. And then I realized that I was getting clients from just the people I've interviewed. So I was like, oh, this is a smart way. So let me just, up the number of people I interview, right? But also this year, because I'm launching a mastermind. So I told myself, you know what, I'm just going to keep it to once a week for interviewing all these high ticket service providers on Monday. And then on Thursdays, I'm going to do my own solo episodes. That way I am building kind of my own brand as well. Like, my own know, like, and trust factor, not just interviewing people, so that, I'm building their know, like, and trust factor. So this way I'm kind of building both, right? I'm getting the network that I want, and I'm getting, people kind of, oh, Chrystabelle knows about these as well. So yeah, so kind of Monday and Thursdays for me right now.
That's interesting, because I know people who do like podcast prospecting, and they've got like multiple podcasts. Like me, I have 3 podcasts and I'm publishing 6 interviews a week. I am still trying to build that number and do virtual summits, because I just like the interviewing aspect and the prospecting aspect. Now, you don't want to, like, it's not like, hello, welcome to Breakthrough Success, I have my podcast coaching, go buy it. Like, that's not how you start your show. So how do you build that relationship to the point where a guest is like, I want to invest in your services and what you're doing?
Yeah, so I think everything starts from even just from the email that goes out to them. Like, in my email, I already, like, there's this part where it says, like, founder of Chris Media, we are a messenger marketing agency, blah, blah, blah. Here's my freebie, go download it. So from there, they kind of already know who this person is who's reaching out to them. And that might just kind of trigger some intrigue, what's that thing? Once they're on my show, there's like, halfway through my show, I kind of do like this little ad break, and I say like, hey, I'm just going to do a quick ad read from my agency. So I'm like, so this show is sponsored by Chris Media, my messenger marketing agency, right? And so not every guest would end up asking me about it, but some of them do. They're like, at the end of the show, they're like, hey, can you tell me more about this messenger bot that you're talking about? And I'm like, sure, blah, 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 blah. And of course, then again, not all will end up becoming my clients, but really just like all I need is just 1 or 2, because they're high ticket service, clients. So I'm just like, yeah, just 1 or 2, right? So for me, that has always been the strategy. Like, I don't go and hard sell. I'm like, you got, like, you're great. You need a bot. You need a messenger bot for your business. I don't do that. Like, I just kind of sip it in. I'm just like, you drop it here in my email. I drop it there in my ad read, and from there, I just take it from there. Yeah.
So, I mean, I feel like people don't think about a follow-up and stuff like that. So you're like letting people know who you are, like going in like before the interview. And it could even go a dimension further where you're emailing them just like leading up to the episode. You mentioned the sponsorship, which is like that 30 minutes, 30 seconds, imagine 30-minute, 30-second sales pitch. And then you've got people asking you about it at the end. So I feel like, one thing I also do for my shows is I have the interview slots 40 to 45 minutes, but the show never goes that long. There's always room for that post conversation.
Yeah. And what I try to do after the show is, so what I did last year was I actually sent out like, cards. I just emailed, like, sent it out by post. I sent out cards to all the guests, most of the guests that I actually interviewed. And that kind of also just kind of made them remember like, oh, oh yeah, I was on her show. So I think it's all about the relationship. Sometimes someone might not need your service right now, but it doesn't mean they wouldn't need it like a year from now or 2 years from now or whenever they feel inspired by their colleagues, right? They're like, oh, what, I want to get that as well. Oh, I remember Chrystabelle does it. So it's always about just keeping, top of mind and just saying hi once in a while, even though they've been on your show, but whatever, right? I mean, the relationship is so much more than just getting them on your show. It's about what do you do after that show, right? Like, how do you build that relationship? So from that, like from the podcast, I've had like guests come on like my summits. I've had guests come like return back for like some of the live stream shows I've done. So it's like 2-3 times enough. I've been talking to them, or I add them on Facebook, or we just chat sometimes. It's all about a relationship at the end of the day, isn't it?
Yeah, and I love that. I love how Chrystabelle is saying all these different things she's doing after the interview. On Acuity, I have something that goes out 24 hours after each episode to someone saying, hey, like, it was a pleasure to have you on the show. Would you like to schedule a free strategy call? And I talk about those different things like that. But Chrystabelle is really going all in on the relationship afterwards with postcards, with engaging with the person. Now, obviously, don't name names here, but I am wondering if you can remember a certain scenario where you had someone on your show, they didn't become a client right away, but then like months later, and maybe even a year later, they become a client, and some of the ways you were still keeping in touch and staying in front of them.
Yeah, so I had one client. She came on my show, and she's a business coach. She's pretty popular, and during the whole ad read, at the end of the ad read, I was like, hey, have you tried Facebook Messenger marketing? And she was like, no, we've been like, my team and I have been thinking about it, but I've not tried it. But yeah, we're trying to like figure out how we're going to add it in. I'm like, cool, that's all right. Now let's move on to the next segment of the show. Now, when I was editing the show like a couple of months later, and I was like, oh, it's a good idea to reach out to her again and just kind of figure out if she has started, right? I'm like, hey, like I was just like editing the show, and I just heard this part where you said like you were thinking of using it. Like I was wondering, like, have you started using it yet? If not, do you want me to help you with it and the kind of stuff? And she was like, you know what, we've been thinking about it, but it's just like so much stuff to do, like we've not started it yet. And so she was like, yeah, I would love to jump on a call with you. And so that actually, like, she didn't say yes right away, like from our interview, but like 2 months down the road, she actually became a paying client. So, sometimes it's about the follow-up, right? Like people don't have you at the top of mind, like naturally, like you, like everyone's so busy. So you just kind of like pop into the inboxes and like, hey, how's it going? Like, since our last interview, you said this, or you were interested in this. How's that going? And then you can just kind of follow up from there naturally.
And it's interesting. You said you were able to go back at the episode and you saw she was interested. Is that a question you asked during the episode or the post-production? I mean, post-conversation?
During the episode, because one reason why I wanted to ask, like I asked that question quite often, is because I kind of want my listeners who are not so, aware of this whole messenger marketing thing. I wanted them to kind of realize that these high ticket service providers, they are also, like aware of all these marketing trends, and some of them have already adopted it. Some of them haven't. So it's a way for me to also kind of get some testimonials out of it if they've already tried it and they're like, yeah, I've tried it in the past. I liked it. It was a great, conversion rate, whatever. So someone listening to it would be like, oh, look, this business coach tried it and she said it was good. You know what I mean? So it's just kind of all tied together. Yeah.
That's smart. So, I mean, it's interesting to get the listeners involved as well. And you get to see the, like the guest is saying that, I've used it successfully, or the guest is saying, I haven't dabbled in it yet, but I'm interested. And that's when you could reach out to the guest. Can you just give us a breakdown? Like if roles were reversed and I was a guest on your show, how would you lead into that?
Ooh, nice. So I would just say, hey, Marc, we're going to take a quick break here and just going to do a quick ad read for my agency. And then I'll just go into like how like this show is sponsored by my agency, Chris Media. We are a messenger marketing agency for high ticket service providers. If you want to learn more about Facebook Messenger bot marketing, I've got this free resource for you. Go to chrismedia.com. And then, Marc, have you tried Facebook Messenger bot marketing? And then you will say yes or no. And I'll be like, oh, well, if you said yes, I'll be like, well, tell me more about it. Like, did you like it? Did you not like it? And like, how did you use it? If you said no, I'll be like, oh, that's interesting. And I'll just like drop some ideas for you, and then we'll move on from it. Like, I don't try to like talk too much about messenger bot marketing on on each show, because I'm like, imagine if every episode I'm just talking about messenger bot marketing, it'd be like, oh my God, just enough, right? Because it's not hack your messenger bot, it's like hack your online business. And so I just try to kind of just like just tease it into it, and then I'm just move on. So that's kind of always been my way around it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great balance, because I can see that getting really like, then the person does feel like they're on a sales call rather than a podcast interview. So I can totally see that, where it's like, someone says, I'm not interested in it. I'm like, well, you could do this, and this to help, but One of the things I want to go back and talk about, and then you go back into, I mean, is that how you do it, or do you have a different way of pivoting?
Kind of. It's just like after we kind of like talk about like the use case and all that, be like, so you can use like a messenger bot to kind of just share your content. All right, now I want to move on to the strategies part of content marketing. So let's move on to content marketing. So I literally just said that let's move on to whatever that we want to talk about today, because my podcast is kind of broken down into stories first, and then the ad, and then the strategies. So it's always just easier that way. Like, we're done with the stories, now let's move on to the strategies.
Yeah, I love that. And it is definitely a good mix to mention it and to give yourself the sponsorship and to let the guests know what you do and not making it too much. You don't want to, you still want to have that interview, like what the podcast is supposed to be. Now, so far we've been talking about it from the guest standpoint. How have the listeners been engaging with the sponsorship? Have you seen people say like, I listened to your show and I saw all these different guests say that they've used it or they haven't used it, and now I want to use it from you? Or like, how's that worked?
Yeah, you know what's funny though, from the listener's point of view, I haven't really gotten many inquiries coming in for my services, my chatbot services, only because I kind of feel as well it's a high ticket product. It's not something you buy like $27. It's a couple of grand. So it's for a lot of listeners, they're like, I don't know if that's right for me. And that's totally okay, because not everyone's my target audience. But because I have this new mastermind coming up, and so this is actually the next few months, I'm actually going to be testing if the podcast is actually going to be driving people to the mastermind, because the mastermind is the Hack Your Online Business Mastermind. So my God, like all the audience have to come from the podcast, isn't it? So that's going to be like a low cost product. So hopefully people will be driving through the podcast and to the mastermind. But yeah, at this stage, I have no idea if that's going to be a success or not, but let's see. I hope it is.
And that's interesting because, if you have the right guests on your show, they could definitely pay your high ticket. But some of the people listening, they may be just trying to figure out business. They may be just trying to figure out Messenger and be willing to do stuff themselves. And they don't have the thousands of dollars to spend. That's why, I feel like if you don't interview guests, you miss out on so much of the benefits podcasting provides you, like relationships, clients, partnerships, all that different stuff really comes with the guests.
Yeah, like a lot of people just assume like, oh, if I don't get a sponsor on my show, I'm a failure. If I don't get like 100,000 people listening to my podcast, I'm a failure. I'm like, dude, like there's like so much beyond just like all these like numbers and cents, right? The relationship that you build, those are like priceless, because the people that I know, like like their circle of network, they like, I now have access to their circle of network. Anytime I need something, I'm just like, hey, Mark, do you know someone who does this, or who might be interested in this, right? And you could say the same, you could ask me the same as well, and I can give you like the names, right? And so I think a lot of people, they're just going to podcasting, and that's why I think most of them only do up to 10 episodes and they drop out. But yeah, I think people just got to look way beyond just like the dollars and cents for podcasting.
Yeah, I definitely love that breakdown because, I mean, there's just so many different ways to do podcasting, but having guests on your show is going to be one of the best things you could do for yourself. Speaking of good things you could do, I mean, Breakthrough Success is a great show, but there are others out there like Hack Your Online Business, which will be in the show notes for people who want to learn more about you, your brand, your work. Where do we go?
Yeah, for sure. So if you want to learn more about me, you got to go to chrismedia.com/breakthrough. Over there, when you go through this link, I will actually give you a free resource, the 5 reasons why your business needs a messenger chatbot. And the last one might actually surprise you. You can go over there and download it, or go check out my podcast. It's on iTunes, Spotify, Hack Your Online Business. And of course, if you want to learn more about the mastermind, you can go to hackyouronlinebusiness.com. You can find out more about there.
Well, Chrystabelle, it was a pleasure having you on the show. All those links will be in the resource, and thanks for coming on Breakthrough Success.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it, Marc.